Ahoy there, Legion! 'Tis the Monday after a Devstream, so you know I got a recap and review for you. The theme this week seemed to bounce back and forth between good news and bad news, which kinda leaves me scratching my head on which side of those two won overall. But I'm sure PC Tenno will be finding out all about that today when they log in. I know themes can change in time, and this video goes live Monday, so consider this a potential preview of what you're downloading right now, but take it with a grain of salt. Oh, okay, bad example. Take it with a grain of sand. And hope for the best. Let's start off with the biggie. Mag Prime and her weapons are getting put back in the vault. This part was not a surprise. It was known, Khaleesi. Yet we still have relics with Mag Prime access stuff on them. Those relics are going to no longer drop when she gets vaulted. Good news is we can keep those. Bad news is Nekros Prime access is coming out like a week or two later, and he's going to have his own set of relics. And since all the stockpiled keys you had were already converted to relics when Mag was active, you might be connecting the dots that we're going to have to farm those new ones up from scratch when that happens. And unless DE has a plan for this, Console Squad might actually win out from all those hotfix delays. If Nekros is available before Console gets the Spectre update and thus the Void key to relic conversion, you're going to suddenly have a bunch of Nekros keys right out of the gates. If they do, things might get a bit loud on them forums. So we'll call that the bad news. The good news is, to help with things, they're going to make relics easier to farm. So instead of B and C rewards being the primary drops on, say, survival, they're going to add some more relics to A drops instead. Also, Eximus units are going to be able to drop relics all over the solar system, which is nice. And I like it, I do, but now you got this conflict arising between the old and the new void drop systems. On one hand, if you have relics at the ready, you'll get rare items much more consistently than before from them. But on the other, the RNG might have shifted from the loot itself to getting the proper relic to loot that item in the first place. I don't like the extra layer of RNG on anything, but I will admit parts are far easier to come by now. But then you have each run consuming a relic per person, while the old one you could stretch it out by 4, but the odds of getting the gear you actually wanted back then was a lot lower than 2, so it's hard to compare them directly, but I can see both sides having valid points. Continuing with that duality, fissure missions will not spawn a solitary fissure you need to activate, which some found repetitive. Now they just pop in and corrupt nearby enemies or spawn them directly for a time before disappearing again, which is good. But after sealing them, they continue to appear and spawn enemies for some reason until you leave the level, which is bad. Some players complain the drop rate of traces was dependent on loot abilities, which is a valid concern. So now you don't have enemies drop them on death anymore and instead grant them to you automatically for getting that 10th and final reactant. In the example they showcased, they earned 8. Which is the average amount you'd get without loot powers. So, good, we can now have a flat reward across the board, but unless they buff that up to 25, which is what you could get with loot powers, that's bad. Also, since the fissures continue to spawn after you get that reward, why bother having it as a secondary objective at all? Why not have Reactant randomly drop off the corrupted the fissures procure, and that itself gives us traces? They never brought up the suggestion of farming traces from void missions that was mentioned and written down 2 prime times ago. So I guess that's off the table. But it seems really weird that we have such a high cap on traces now, yet such a slow way to acquire them. And now we can't even boost that ourselves because that's not an actual drop we can buff. So unless that number got buffed in the code, that's a straight downgrade overall. But again, we'll find out very shortly ourselves what's going live. There's some more, but I'm going to condense it down a bit because this thing's getting pretty long. I hear that pretty often. Ooh, good catch, Captain, thank you. I did leave myself wide open for that one. I hear that one even more. Alright, Legion, let's fire up the lightning round and call this one done. Getting 10 reactants will also give you a short-lived buff of unlimited ammo, melee channeling, or energy. You can only get that buff once per mission though, which again seems ripe for something folks wouldn't mind farming 10 of those things for repeatedly per mission and then getting traces from that. But moving on, ArchWing is getting tweaked after all, so now you'll be able to keep your lunch down while playing it again. If you have the stomach to queue up for it in the first place. The Rhino Grenier skin finally made it through Tenno-gen. There were others, but in my unbiased opinion, that was the only important one. I kid, I'll put a link in the description for you to peruse. Desecrate is a toggle now, as foretold in Devstream's past. We'll be getting like spray paint tags to paint the walls. They're called glyphs, so seems kind of random, but okay. Titania was teased right at the end, but when aren't they? And something on Primetime they left out was crafting material drops are gonna change. They didn't provide any extra detail on the Devstream, but it seems like a big change, so more on that in the future, I suppose. So, if you're still awake and not off on the forums typing about the impending changes, what did you like the most? Or how about the least? Leave a comment below and let us know. If you liked this review and it kept you entertained, we'd be honored if you'd like, favorite, and share it with your fellow Tenno. It always helps us out a ton when you does. As always, thank you for watching. Catch you next time, Legion. Take care.